Sorry. The Electrical Commission meeting was being held as well. So let's continue with audit report number 63. Mr. Gary Chen, your turn. Sorry, I was chairing the other meeting next door this morning. Yes, I know. I understand that my other members have asked questions on Chapter 4. So, never mind, just go ahead. I'd like to ask about the management of mandatory occurrence reporting incidents. In Part 5, would witnesses please turn to Table 8 of Chapter 5. Chairman, the handling of MOR incidents is very important in preventing future accidents. And on Table 8, as you can see, there are still outstanding cases, 634 outstanding MOR cases. And in Para 5.8, altogether, there were 811 cases that had remained outstanding for over a year. And the situation is not satisfactory. I'd like to know from CAD why there were 811 outstanding cases that remained outstanding for over a year. What is the reason? Had it to do with manpower shortage or technical difficulties? Because on average, or was it the case that on average, it took about a year for these outstanding cases to be handled? DG. First of all, we accept the audit report's comment on the management of MOR database. There is room for improvement, indeed. As for the question put by members, on page 56 of the English version, Table 8, Para 5.9. According to latest figures of the 600-odd cases, less than 30 cases require follow-up action. And let me explain that for the MOR database, it is a backup tool for follow-up actions and for analysis to see the aspects in which we should enhance our management. And after incidents happened, we have dedicated staff in our office who would liaise with the relevant service provider, perhaps the airport authority, the maintenance units, and they would follow up on the issues immediately. For those serious issues, they would be followed up on immediately. For other cases, we would get information for follow-up actions. Most importantly, the database should be updated immediately. Unfortunately, after handling by our staff members or after our staff knew that the service providers had follow-up on the issue, the database were not updated immediately. So as far as the outstanding MOR cases were concerned in our database, upon our review, it was understood that many of these outstanding cases could be closed. Now, my understanding of the witnesses' evidence is that the figure reduced substantially from 600 odd to some 30 cases because the database was not updated immediately after follow-up actions. Now, the large number of MOR cases outstanding had to do with the reporting by airliners. However, in the report, it was mentioned that it was also very common for late reporting of incidents, as a department monitoring civil aviation safety Why didn't you urge the airliners to report to your department any incidents immediately instead of letting them drag on for so long? Any new measures, DG, for service providers and maintenance companies? They are responsible for reporting such incidents to us, and for serious incidents they are required to report the incidents to our department for immediate follow-up actions. However, for minor incidents, for example, when the aircraft is out of our territory, it may take some time before the incident reaches our department. However, the legal requirement is that for a reportable incident, within 96 hours, the person responsible for reporting the incident should do so. Should report to us. Well, the discrepancies have been identified by the audit, and they have given us the recommendations. And based on the audit's recommendation, we have implemented changes. First of all, we have informed all the airline service companies, including airliners, maintenance companies, etc., to follow the regulatory requirements. Within 96 hours, after knowing the occurrence of such reportable incidents, they are required to report to us. And we've also made changes to the form, and there is a new entry for them to tell us when they have known of the incident, whether it is within 96 hours, and we believe that this will help improve the situation of late reporting. For airliners which often report late, what measures do you have to tackle that, or will you just let them off? That depends on the nature of late reporting, because there are different reasons for late reporting for individual cases. Sometimes information may only reach the hands of the responsible unit late for reporting. So that depends on how the incident occurred and the circumstances. And we'll discuss with the service providers and the relevant units for follow-up actions. If we find that there is justification, or there isn't justification for late reporting, we will hold a meeting with the management of that company, and we may also issue warning letters, and we have done so before. In para 5.20, the audit revealed that of the 412 medium risk cases, the most frequent incidents were related to airport vehicles not giving way to aircraft. And starting from 2013, the CAD had ceased to categorize these cases as reportable occurrences. Now, there are so many such incidents. Well, it may be very serious for an airport vehicle to crash into an aircraft. It may damage the structure of an aircraft, the engine or the wing, which may affect civil aviation safety. Of the 412 risk cases, why did the CAD consider them not necessary for reporting? Was it that after careful consideration, these incidents have been resolved through administrative means, and there have not been any further incidents of airport vehicles bumping into aircrafts? Well, basically, the most frequent incidents were related to airport vehicles not giving way to aircraft.
All vehicles moving on the ground or any aircraft should give way. That is, any aircraft should give way to the vehicles on the ground. Different drivers or personnel for different vehicles are all licensed. they also have to be vetted by the airport authority, sit for examinations before they are granted the qualification to drive in the airport. And these drivers know that the aircraft have to well, although in the case the vehicle did not give way, probably it's because it's still far away from the aircraft. So this is according to the airport standards. It really depends on whether or not risks are involved. So assessment is always done for each and every case. So in the audit report, it's mentioned that airport vehicles do not give way to aircraft. In all those cases, no risks are involved. So the cases are not included in the database. We've already reported to the AA, which has actually issued guidelines to all drivers of vehicles to alert them to the subsidiary legislation and to caution them to give way to aircraft. Failing that, there will be a penalty system. Kenneth? In paragraph 5.20, this safety manual is mentioned. Have you been following the ICAO's standards? How will you define level 1 cases? Perhaps I should defer to my colleague, Mr. Liu. Mr. Chairman, honorable members, perhaps I should report on this mandatory occurrence reporting scheme. According to the requirements of the ICAO, all civil aviation authorities must set up a mandatory occurrence reporting mechanism. That's why we have this scheme, the MOR scheme. When our service operators encounter incidents which lead to safety issues, the case should be reported to us for analysis, and we'll be forward-looking in determining which cases should be shared with the industry such that they can take precaution. The ICAO promulgates very broad principles and guidelines, but for our reports, we try to include more details for the analysis of the industry. So the categorization is internal categorization. Now may I refer you to figure 10. Figure 10 on page 58 of the audit report is a simple bar chart. Number of MOR reports has been on the rise. Reports not meeting the reporting rule also increasing in percentage. 2009-2010, originally 76%, now jumping or dropping to 65% because of this rising number. So is it because you got more cases or you had manpower shortage? Now, what's the report? What's the purpose of such reports? Now, if there is a near-miss incident which will be serious, you have to submit a report within 96 hours, that is 4 days. The scope of the report will only inform you that there's such an incident, or will it include preventive measures, say near miss between two aircraft in the air. Another type may be more minor. They say air stewards have a serious quarrel with customers. All right, the airline concerned submits a report to you informing you of the incident. What will the CAD do? You just update your database and file the report, or will you follow up on any remedial action taken by the airline concerned? So for major and minor incidents, will you have different considerations? Now, what about this 96 hours? What would you require the service provider to do? DG or Mr. Liu? Mr. Chairman, I'll answer part of the question, and if necessary, Mr. Liu can supplement. Well, if there is a near-miss incident, usually it won't be just as simple as mandatory occurrence reporting, that is, to report to us within 4 days. Basically, we immediately know for a near-miss incident, we usually will classify that as a serious incident. And if the distance apart is really too short, say if the aircraft are traveling at high speed and experience a near miss, that is, the two aircraft pass by each other at high speed, we'll treat that as an accident in our investigation. If it is a serious accident, a serious incident, then it will exceed the realm of the MOR mechanism. We'll have an accident investigation regulation, a regulation for investigating into aviation accidents. We observe Annex 13 of the requirements of the ICAO on how to conduct the investigation, how to publish the investigation report, and so forth. And the incident report has to be submitted to the CE for follow-up. Let me say something about serious incident and accidents. How will we handle them? Well, Chairman, perhaps you should invite Mr. Low to tell us, well, under the MOR scheme, after receiving a report and you've read the report, will you follow up with the service provider, or you just file the report and update your database? I would like to know what exactly will you do. Who will answer this? Mr. Chairman, perhaps I should answer. If an MOR is submitted to the CAD, we'll read the content. Depending on the content, we will see whether the report should be classified as an MOR, because certain incidents may not necessarily be included as an MOR. So if an incident does not have to be included in the MOR, then it will just go to our database. But if it is an MOR, we have different units, like the standard unit, aviation standard, air service division, etc., with their respective standards. So we'll send the incident to these respective divisions for follow-up. The AA or the unit responsible for repair and maintenance will first of all verify the report and then follow up on what should be done. Anyway, such reports will be included in our database. So our colleagues operating the database will have done something, and the follow-up colleagues will also have done something. Anyway, there's room for improvement because our colleagues might have not immediately follow up in a timely manner. We've actually improved this MOR scheme And our colleagues were reminded again of the importance of upgrading the database. Any more follow-up by CAD colleagues? Mr. Chairman, perhaps I should add a few words about Mr. Leung's question. Let me give you some background information. Now, it said that in figure 10, the figures were on the rise. We did notice that, number one, we got more and more flights and more air traffic controllers. So it's a natural trend that incidents increased as well. We'll closely monitor the situation. Secondly, the maturity of the industry to automatically submit reports to us has also been enhanced, so more incidents were reported to us. Well, the DG mentioned 96 hours. Audit colleagues also mentioned the same. All along, up to the time the audit came, our standard was to count 96 hours from the occurrence of the incident. So some councillors discovered that certain incidents were reported more than 96 hours afterwards. Our DG already explained that we have already notified the industry that they should differentiate between the date of being informed of the incident and the date of reporting. I believe in future the monitoring situation will improve. As for the other question, when a particular incident is reported to us, we'll see how it should be handled. As we said, the statistics and data are for analysis purpose. For the airlines, for the repair and maintenance companies, lessons can be learned from these incidents. So we have to share these incidents with them. Kenneth, Mr. Chairman, can we have a guarantee, an undertaking from them? That is, each incident, each case inputted into the database should mean that the case has been concluded. I hope you can give us a guarantee that for each incident report, ancillary measures should also be included in the database, because you mentioned lessons to be learned. Because by doing so, can you make the database meaningful? Yes, Mr. Chairman, we understand that. Together with the service providers, we handle each and every case. And in the course of handling, we always see how we can improve on similar occurrences under similar circumstances. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions for the time being. Mr. Ng Leung Seng, I'd like to follow up on paragraph 5.21, long outstanding cases. Well, for those outstanding cases for more than 6 months, they'll be monitored on a monthly basis. So what sort of monitoring is this? I want to know the actual monitoring work. And usually, what follow-up work will you do? And what's the purpose of such monitoring? Any actual effect? And then starting from 2009, you got 20 cases then. For cases that had not been followed up, if you now follow up on them, will it be effective? Have you estimated the situation? Perhaps I should defer to Mr. Liu. Let me first explain why we have these long outstanding cases. Why are these cases still under processing? It's because we have not appropriately updated our database. every time when there's an incident, be it the airline or the repair company, they have colleagues to follow up on the case. And there are deficiencies on the part of our colleagues. In fact, some incidents had been concluded, and the follow-up procedures had already been completed, but all those were not suitably reflected in the database. As a result, the figures indicate an increase. What about the effect of your follow-up work? Yes, you were able to explain yourselves, but how would those explanations benefit future cases and scenarios? Well, we've followed up on all these cases. The follow-up work was effective. It's just that the database did not reflect that the case or cases had already been closed or concluded. So this was a deficiency on our part. Well, 201 cases being followed up for 4 years without being concluded. So, even for your database, there would have been huge changes in 4 years' time. So how would things happen 4 years ago affect things happening 4 years afterwards? Well, Mr. Chairman, for these 200-odd cases outstanding for more than 4 years, the absolute majority of them had actually been processed, handled, and concluded. It's just that the information had not been covered by the database. In fact, in our database, less than 30 cases are still outstanding. Oh, Mr. Chairman, this point is very important. Even for accountancy, cases would be written off after a certain period of time. And you now leave this 201 cases for people to read. Well, this is very catchy. The figure of 201 is really very catchy, very glaring to the readers. So, any empowerment for writing off after a lapse of a certain period of time? DG, I'd like to thank the member for his comment. I'll go back and consider his advice. There can only be 2 reasons for outstanding cases after a period of time. Number 1, there might be communication problems among our colleagues. Then we have to revive the case and consider it afresh. Number 2, a certain case may not be able to be resolved within a short period of time. In any case, we should have a mechanism to handle those cases in our database that had been outstanding for quite some time. There should be a mechanism to follow up on such cases or writing off such cases. Now, for those outstanding for more than 4 years, can you tell us the outstanding period, the longest outstanding period? Perhaps I should defer to Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu? In fact, the report mentions an individual case that had been lasting for many years. Of course, in the past few months, when the audit colleagues came and looked for these cases, they had sparked attention on our part on this case, or these cases. Back then, we did not appropriately conclude those cases, leading to statistical delay. And sometimes we had to follow up the case at source. Then it might take several months for actual handling.
9 years, 10 years? Mr. Liu? Well, the case mentioned in the report has taken a bit of a long time. I don't have the answer right now. Well, from my experience, if there was nothing wrong with the record or the dealing, usually, if it is an MOR case investigation, it will complete within 6 months. After investigation, the case should have been closed. And if it's for some reason not closed, then it would take longer than usual, like the case mentioned in the report. Mr. Allen Leung. In relation to this 1999, the Air Navigation Hong Kong Orders 1995 Cap 448C, the law stipulates certain requirements which focused on aviation safety. You're referring to paragraph 5.3, yes. If we refer to the audit report, aviation service providers and operating personnel are required to make reports, but it seems that they are not really related to aviation safety. It seems that the scope of the persons responsible for making a report has been widened. Whose decision was it? The scope is indeed rather wide because, well, aviation is related to flights, which in turn will affect aviation safety. So whether it is air traffic control, maintenance of flights, of aircraft, operation, things that happen in a cockpit, meteorological conditions are all related. So the scope is very wide. So we require service providers to make reports of any reportable occurrence, because all these factors will directly or indirectly affect aviation safety. Within a specified period of time, service providers or aerodrome licensees are required to make reports, and they can only continue to provide service after we have given them the green light. Whenever an incident that might affect aviation safety has occurred, they are encouraged to make a report. I appreciate the approach adopted by the SG that they would rather err on the safe side. According to the Air Navigation Hong Kong orders, the persons responsible for making report comprises a lot of people. Yes, they have good intentions. They would rather cast the net wide when it comes to aviation safety. But the data bank is not seen as something important. In paragraph 5.9, there are two versions, June and August. There were discrepancies. And in relation to MOR cases, if you refer to Figure 10, only 65% of the cases comply with the 4-day reporting rule. All the others are longer than 4 days. In Figure 11, you find that out of the 1,037 late reports, well, some of them take as long as 180 days for a report to be made. This is a very important management tool. But it seems that it's not properly used, this MOR database. Well, you have to ensure aviation safety. And this order, Air Navigation Hong Kong Orders 1995, gives you an effective means to ensure safety by listing out all individuals and organizations that are required to make reports. Using this database, you are aware of everything that has taken place, all the inadequacies, areas that require improvements, potential hazards. My understanding that this is not punitive in essence. Say, for example, when a report is made, then there will be a penalty. I wonder if the SG agrees with me. Under CAP 4483, the MOR scheme or program is not effectively used. And the database can be used more effectively and more accurately. And it can be analyzed in a way that will reflect closest to the situation. Sorry, you have to excuse me. About 5 minutes, I have to vote. They don't have a quorum. I have to vote in the electoral commission. Sorry.